Among history's most remarkable figures, two women stand whose strength and legacy still echo across centuries: Theresa Kunigunde Sobiska and Princess Marie Amelie of Baden. Each carved her legacy across continents, navigating politics, tragedy, and power in a world ruled by men. Let us begin with the first, Theresa Kunigunde Sobiska. Theresa Kunigunde Sobiska was born on the 4th of March in the year 1676 at Wilanow Palace in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. What future awaited the only daughter of a king and a queen, born into grandeur, yet destined for heartbreak? How would she navigate the treacherous world of European courts, and what price would she pay for love, loyalty, and legacy? Her journey from Polish princess to Bavarian regent is one of endurance, brilliance, and untold sacrifice. Please watch my full video until the end, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please make sure to share it with your friends. Thank you. Now, let us dive into the full story. Theresa was born into one of Europe's most powerful dynasties, the House of Sobieski. Her father, King John III Sobieski, was a revered military hero, and her mother, Marie Casimir Louise, brought French elegance and influence to the Polish court. From her earliest days, Theresa lived surrounded by the customs, culture, and grandeur of royal life. Yet, unlike many royal children, she had a rare distinction. She was the only daughter among 13 siblings to survive infancy. Her baptism, held in Jaworzno on the 19th of July, was attended by the greatest names of her age. Charles II of England served as her godfather, and Marie Therese of Austria, Queen of France, as her godmother, both represented by proxy. From her cradle, Theresa was steeped in diplomacy, ceremony, and the burdens of destiny. Theresa Kunigunde Sobiska's upbringing was anything but ordinary. As the cherished daughter of King John III Sobieski and Queen Marie Casimir, she was raised not just for a life of privilege, but for one of purpose. Her education was guided by some of the finest tutors in Europe, who taught her painting, music, and the classical languages of Latin and Italian. She also learned fluent French, the language of diplomacy, preparing her for the courts she would one day enter. From an early age, Theresa displayed a sharp intellect and an independent spirit. While her brothers were groomed for warfare and governance, Theresa was trained in the softer arts of courtly grace, cultural refinement, and political influence. Her mother, who remained deeply connected to French nobility, ensured that Theresa would be equally at ease in the palaces of Poland or the salons of Paris. In the early months of 1692, Theresa's name was even linked to the Crown Prince of Denmark in a potential royal marriage. It was a prestigious match, one that could have united powerful dynasties and shaped the future of Northern Europe. But the plans quietly dissolved, and Theresa's path shifted once again. Though her marriage would not be to the Danish crown, her destiny would still lead her into one of Europe's most powerful and turbulent courts, Bavaria. The choices and expectations of her youth laid the foundation for a life far grander and far more complicated than anyone could have predicted. As Theresa Kunigunde Sobiska reached her teenage years, whispers of her marriage prospects began to ripple through the courts of Europe. Among the most serious contenders was the Crown Prince of Denmark, a match that would have elevated her to one of the most influential thrones in the north. Her father, King John III Sobieski, who was known both for his military triumphs and political foresight, initially supported the union. The alliance would have forged a strong connection between Poland and Denmark, potentially altering the balance of power in the region. Behind closed doors, discussions were already underway. Envoys exchanged letters, dowries were considered, and expectations grew. Theresa, still in her mid-teens, was likely aware of the immense weight such a marriage would carry. Yet for reasons that remain largely undocumented, perhaps political shifts, internal resistance from Denmark, or unforeseen diplomatic tensions, the engagement never materialized. For Theresa, this sudden turn might have felt like both a relief and a rejection. The Danish court, with its Lutheran traditions and colder climate, was vastly different from her vibrant Polish upbringing. And so, the door quietly closed on that chapter. But in its place, another opportunity was emerging. Her father had another ally, a powerful one. Maximilian Emanuel, the Elector of Bavaria and governor of the Spanish Netherlands, had just lost his wife. With political ambition and royal duty once again calling, Theresa's future would soon be redirected toward a much different kingdom. On the 15th of August in the year 1694, Theresa Kunigunda Sobiska was formally married to Maximilian Emanuel, the Elector of Bavaria and governor of the Spanish Netherlands. She was just 19 years old. The wedding took place by proxy in Warsaw, with her eldest brother standing in for the groom. Her actual meeting with Maximilian would not occur until several months later, on the 1st of January in the year 1695, when she arrived in Brussels after a long and extravagant journey across Europe. That journey was no simple affair. It lasted nearly 50 days and was paid for by her mother, Queen Marie Casimir. Every stop along the way displayed the elegance, grandeur, and political significance of the union. Theresa's dowry was an impressive 500,000 thalers, and the event was celebrated across multiple courts. To mark the occasion, an Italian opera titled Amor Vuol il Giusto was commissioned and performed in her honor, using a libretto by the writer Giovanni Battista Lampunani. This marriage was more than a union of two people. It was a strategic alliance. Max Emanuel had once been a military comrade of her father, and now, through marriage, he was bound to the Polish royal house. Theresa stepped boldly into her new role, leaving behind the familiarity of Wilano and embracing the uncertain world of Bavarian politics. Her identity as a Polish princess would now be woven into the fabric of Bavarian power. When Theresa Kunigunda Sobiska finally met her husband, Maximilian Emanuel, in Brussels on the 1st of January in the year 1695, it marked the beginning of a dramatic new chapter in her life. The Spanish Netherlands, a region then under Habsburg control, was a place of military importance, cultural brilliance, and shifting allegiances. As the governor's wife, Theresa was instantly thrust into the heart of court affairs, foreign diplomacy, and ceremonial obligations. Despite her youth, Theresa adjusted quickly. She brought with her the poise of Polish royalty and the refined education of a European noblewoman. Her presence added prestige to Max Emanuel's court, and within the first few years of marriage, she gave birth to 6 children, a testament to both her duty and her resilience. Life in the Spanish Netherlands was not without its challenges, but Theresa navigated them with a sense of grace and composure inherited from her mother. The court at Brussels became a hub of social activity and political ambition, with Theresa at its center. But while the early years of her marriage appeared peaceful, trouble loomed on the horizon. The growing tensions of the War of the Spanish Succession were beginning to stir. For Theresa, the beauty of the Spanish Netherlands would soon be overshadowed by military defeat and personal sacrifice. Her role would shift from consort to regent, and her strength would be tested in ways she never imagined. By the early 1700s, Theresa Kunigunda Sobiska had become more than just a royal bride. She was now the Electress of Bavaria and the mother of a growing family. Her life in the Spanish Netherlands had been marked by duty and motherhood, but by May of 1701, the family relocated to Munich. It was here that she began to experience the full weight of her new role. As Electress, she hosted court functions, upheld alliances, and continued raising her children, all while navigating the rising tensions of European war. Theresa gave birth to her last child on the 21st of December in the year 1704. But barely 2 months later, her world was upended. In February 1705, after learning of her husband's secret correspondence with Agnes Lalauchier, a French noblewoman and his longtime mistress, Theresa left for Padua to seek comfort with her mother. It was a heartbreaking moment, not just of marital betrayal, but of political vulnerability. When she attempted to return home in May, the imperial army blocked her path, violating the very treaty that had granted her safe passage. Her family was scattered. 4 of her sons were held in Klagenfurt by Austrian forces, while her youngest children and daughter remained in Munich. In this painful separation, Theresa found herself alone, a mother without her children, an electress without her court, and a woman exiled in her own empire. The War of the Spanish Succession engulfed Europe in a storm of rival claims and shifting alliances. For Theresa Kunigunde Sobiska, it was not just a distant political event, it reshaped the very fabric of her life. Her husband, Maximilian Emanuel, had aligned with France against the Austrian Empire. As tensions exploded into open conflict, Bavaria found itself at the center of a military gamble that would soon collapse. On the 13th of August in the year 1704, the Battle of Blenheim became the defining disaster. The Allied forces, led by John Churchill, the Duke of Marlborough, and Prince Eugene of Savoy, decisively defeated the Franco-Bavarian troops. The loss was catastrophic. Max Emanuel fled the Spanish Netherlands and went into exile at the court of Versailles in France, taking refuge with his French mistress, Agnes Lalauchier. For Theresa, the aftermath was even more isolating. Though the war was technically declared against the elector, not his wife, the consequences fell heavily on her. She had been entrusted with the temporary regency of Bavaria, the only woman ever to rule its electorate. But her authority was undermined by the Treaty of Ilbersheim, signed on the 5th of November 1704. She was given control of the Munich Rentamt, one of the duchy's 4 districts, while the rest of Bavaria was placed under Austrian military rule. Surrounded by hostility, betrayal, and the collapse of her husband's ambitions, Theresa faced the future with fragile dignity and diminishing power. In the wake of her husband's flight and the crushing defeat at Blenheim, Theresa Kunigunde Sobiska found herself thrust into an extraordinary role. With Maximilian Emanuel in exile, she became the acting regent of Bavaria, a position no woman had ever held in the duchy's history. Though her authority was limited by the Treaty of Ilbersheim, which confined her power to the Munich Rentamt, Theresa approached her regency with determination and strategic caution. Initially, she attempted to consult with her husband by dispatching letters and couriers, seeking to align her actions with his will. But with Max Emanuel living comfortably in Versailles alongside his mistress, those communications often arrived too late to be of use. As the political situation grew more volatile, Theresa found herself making independent decisions, balancing loyalty to her husband with the immediate needs of the people under her governance. Her leadership was constantly tested. Many among the Bavarian nobility defected to the Austrian side, weakening her influence and leaving her increasingly isolated. Still, Theresa remained composed. She managed the limited territory under her care with attention to civil stability and court protocol, even as the empire around her fractured. While her regency was brief, lasting only months between late 1704 and early 1705, it marked a remarkable period in her life. one where she rose above personal heartbreak and political collapse to serve as a sovereign in her own right, even if only temporarily. Just as Theresa Kunigunda Sobeska was learning to stand alone in her role as regent, a personal blow struck that would alter her course once more. In early 1705, she discovered letters exchanged between her husband, Maximilian Emmanuel, and Agnes Lalauchier, his French mistress. Though rumors of the affair had circulated before, the undeniable written proof shattered any illusions Theresa may have held about their marriage. The betrayal was not merely emotional, it was political. Agnes had been with Max Emmanuel since before his exile, and her influence over him in Versailles was growing. For Theresa, the letters were not only a sign of unfaithfulness, but a reminder that her voice and position were being undermined from afar. With her dignity wounded and her authority questioned, she made the painful decision to leave Munich and travel to Padua, where her mother was living in temporary residence. Her journey was not just a retreat, but a form of silent protest, a refusal to remain in a court where she no longer held power or respect. Yet even this decision carried dire consequences. When she attempted to return in May of that same year, the imperial army blocked her entry, disregarding the terms of the Treaty of Ilbersheim. Theresa was exiled without negotiation, her court dismantled, and her children split between Austrian guardianship and the Bavarian capital. What began as heartbreak became a political exile, marking yet another loss for a woman who had once stood at the center of European royalty. The pain of betrayal was soon eclipsed by a mother's deepest sorrow, separation from her children. After her exile from Munich in the spring of 1705, Theresa Kunigunda Sobeska faced the unimaginable. Her children, once gathered under her care, were now scattered by war and politics. The 4 eldest boys were taken by the Austrian forces and relocated to Klagenfurt, while her 2 youngest sons and only daughter remained behind in Munich under uncertain conditions. Theresa had no voice in their upbringing during this time, and her letters, if they even reached them, offered little comfort against the daily distance. The isolation she experienced in exile was not just political, but profoundly maternal. Every decision made by the occupying powers felt like another thread torn from the fabric of her family. The imperial authorities claimed to act in the interest of order and stability, but their actions inflicted deep emotional wounds. As a mother, Theresa endured the helplessness of watching her children become pawns in a war she never started. For 10 long years, she remained separated from them, unable to guide them, protect them, or even see them grow. This period of exile from Munich, both from her children and her court, would test her spirit more than any battlefield or royal betrayal. Yet Theresa never ceased to fight quietly with letters, appeals, and the strength to endure. Her love for her children remained unshaken, even as war, politics, and distance conspired to keep them apart. Theresa Kunigunda Sobeska spent 10 long years in exile, and much of that time unfolded in the serene, crumbling beauty of Venice. After being denied re-entry to Munich in 1705, she settled in the city of Canals, not as a royal guest, but as a displaced consort fighting quietly for her rights and dignity. Though far from the Bavarian court, she remained politically active, working tirelessly to negotiate her return and protect her children from afar. Venice offered a strange mix of comfort and isolation. The city, steeped in history and diplomacy, became both sanctuary and cage. Theresa relied on a network of allies to plead her case, reaching out to the Pope, the Republic of Venice, Prince Eugene of Savoy, and even Queen Anne of Great Britain. She also sought support from the Duke of Modena and the Grand Duchess of Tuscany, hoping they could mediate with the Holy Roman Emperor on her behalf. Despite these efforts, little progress was made. Bavaria remained under imperial control, and the political climate in Europe was still shaped by the chaos of the War of the Spanish Succession. Theresa bore the weight of her exile with quiet resolve, even as financial strains, diplomatic delays, and the grief of losing one of her sons during this period added to her burden. Venice, though beautiful, became the backdrop of her longest trial, a place of waiting, of sorrow, and of unwavering hope for restoration. Even in exile, Theresa Kunigunda Sobieska refused to remain silent. With her family torn apart and her duchy under foreign occupation, she turned to diplomacy as her last weapon. Isolated from Munich and her children, she reached beyond borders, appealing directly to Europe's most powerful figures for help. Her strategy was not impulsive, but carefully measured, relying on long-standing alliances and royal connections built during her youth and marriage. Among her earliest appeals was a petition to Pope Clement XI. As a devout Catholic and the wife of a Catholic elector, Theresa hoped the Pope would pressure the Austrian Emperor to honor the terms of her regency and restore her to her rightful place. She also sought support from the Republic of Venice, where she was residing, and whose leaders offered sympathetic ears, if not direct action. Theresa's letters extended across the continent. She contacted Prince Eugene of Savoy, a brilliant military leader and diplomat, and Queen Anne of Great Britain, a monarch with both political sway and moral influence. Her appeals emphasized not only her personal suffering, but the violations of treaties and the injustice of her exile. She also reached out to the Duke of Modena and the Grand Duchess of Tuscany, each carefully chosen for their position within the European balance of power. Though many of these efforts were ignored or stalled, Theresa's persistence was remarkable. She waged a silent resistance, not with armies, but with ink, dignity, and determination against the forces that had stripped her of family, power, and homeland. After a decade of exile and unanswered appeals, Theresa Kunigunda Sobieska's persistence was finally rewarded. In the year 1714, the War of the Spanish Succession drew to a close, and with the Treaty of Baden, her husband Maximilian Emanuel regained control of the Bavarian electorate. Though his exile had lasted 10 years, so had hers. And on the 8th of April in the year 1715, the couple was reunited in Munich. Their return marked more than just a homecoming. It was a public reconciliation between two people whose marriage had been deeply strained by betrayal, war, and distance. Theresa, having spent years fighting to preserve her children's place in Bavaria and her own dignity as electress, returned not in defeat, but with quiet triumph. She did not seek vengeance or courtly drama. Instead, she chose restoration of her family, her role, and her faith. That same year, she founded the Servitinnen Monastery in Munich, dedicating it to Saint Elizabeth. It was a deeply symbolic act, merging religious devotion with social purpose. The monastery became a place of reflection, charity, and service, values that had guided her through her darkest years. Though Max Emanuel resumed his rule, Theresa's influence remained strong behind the scenes. She was no longer just the consort of a powerful man. She was a woman who had endured exile, reclaimed her place, and restored a measure of stability to a fractured royal household, all without ever drawing a sword. Theresa Kunigunda Sobieska's later years were marked by reflection, faith, and quiet strength. After returning to Munich in 1715 and reuniting with her husband, she stepped away from political intrigue and focused on spiritual and charitable pursuits. The monastery she founded, dedicated to Saint Elizabeth, became both a symbol of her resilience and a lasting contribution to the city she once ruled in absence. Her role in court life remained dignified but restrained. While Maximilian Emanuel resumed his duties as Elector, Theresa supported him without drawing attention or seeking power. Yet behind the scenes, her presence was felt. She maintained strong ties with religious institutions, supported education and charity, and preserved the family's legacy with care. Despite the pain of past betrayals, she never publicly criticized her husband. Instead, she chose to embody grace and forgiveness, qualities that deeply shaped her public image. In these final chapters of her life, Theresa also became a quiet advisor to her surviving sons, especially Charles and Clemens, both of whom went on to hold important titles within the Holy Roman Empire. Her letters to them, full of counsel and calm authority, reveal a woman whose influence continued long after her time in court had ended. She also took a keen interest in the education of her grandchildren, ensuring that the values of faith, duty, and dignity would live on in the next generation. Theresa understood that dynasties are not only preserved through power, but through the careful nurturing of wisdom and moral strength. When Max Emanuel passed away in February of 1726, Theresa did not remarry. Having endured war, exile, and loss, she chose to spend her final years in Venice, the city that had once sheltered her during her darkest days. There, she lived with humility and devotion, far from the royal courts that had defined so much of her life. Her legacy was no longer tied only to titles or power, but to the quiet strength she had shown through every trial. The electress who once ruled alone now walked in peace, having reconciled her past with grace. Theresa Kunigunde Sobiska's extraordinary life came to a peaceful close on the 27th of March in the year 1730. She died in Venice, the city that had once been her sanctuary during exile and which now became the place of her final breath. At 54 years old, she had lived through royal grandeur, devastating war, bitter exile, and eventual reconciliation. Her body was returned to Munich, where she was laid to rest in the Theatine Church, a solemn and sacred resting place befitting her rank and legacy. Her passing marked the end of an era. Though she never reigned in the conventional sense, her influence spanned courts and continents. She had been a devoted wife to Maximilian Emanuel, mother to 10 children, including Charles VII, future Holy Roman Emperor, and a temporary regent of Bavaria during one of its most vulnerable periods. Her strength lay not in conquest, but in resilience, in silence, in patience, and in an unbreakable devotion to her family, faith, and duty. Theresa's legacy lived on through her children, especially those who rose to great positions of power in both church and state. Her sons became bishops, cardinals, generals, and emperors. Yet behind their titles was the influence of a mother who had endured hardship with unwavering resolve. In later years, historians and biographers came to view her not only as a consort, but as a figure of quiet resistance, a royal woman who weathered the storms of European conflict with a grace that defied her time. Today, her name may not be as widely remembered as those of kings or conquerors, but her story remains deeply human, a journey of survival, love, loss, and quiet triumph. In death, as in life, Theresa Kunigunde Sobiska stood with quiet dignity, a symbol of endurance in a world shaped by upheaval. Let us now turn to another remarkable figure of royal descent. Princess Marie Amélie of Baden was born on the 11th of October in the year 1817 in Karlsruhe, within the Grand Duchy of Baden. How did this quiet daughter of a southern German duchy become a central figure at the heart of British, French, and Monegasque nobility? What power did she hold, not through thrones or armies, but through family, marriage, and diplomacy? And what legacy did she leave behind through her daughter, whose bloodline still reigns in Monaco today? Marie Amélie Elizabeth Caroline was the youngest daughter of Charles, Grand Duke of Baden, and his wife Stephanie de Beauharnais. Her family stood at the crossroads of tradition and empire. Her mother had been adopted by Napoleon I of France, while her own lineage connected her to multiple royal houses across Europe. Marie's early years were shaped by the prestige of Baden's court and the influence of France's imperial legacy. She grew up in a home where royal daughters were seen not only as future consorts, but as political assets. Her older sisters made impressive alliances, one marrying a Swedish prince, the other becoming mother to rulers in Romania and Portugal. Surrounded by these dynastic expectations, Marie Amélie was destined to follow a similar path. Yet her life would carry her beyond the German-speaking world and into the heart of Scotland's aristocracy. Her journey was just beginning, one that would intertwine her with emperors, empresses, and a future Prince of Monaco. From the moment of her birth, Princess Marie Amélie of Baden was surrounded by powerful family connections. She was not just a daughter of the Grand Duke of Baden. She was part of a web of dynastic ties that linked her to the great thrones of Europe. Her mother, Stephanie de Beauharnais, had been adopted by none other than Napoleon I of France, placing Marie within the shadow of an empire even before she could speak. Her siblings were no less connected. Her elder sister Louise married Prince Gustav of Sweden, once heir to the Swedish throne. Through that union, Louise became the mother of Queen Carola of Saxony. Another sister, Josephine, married Prince Karl Anton of Hohenzollern and became the mother of King Carol I of Romania and Queen Stephanie of Portugal. These alliances were not accidental. They were carefully orchestrated steps in a royal chess game played across the courts of Europe. But Marie's most surprising connection came not through marriage, but through blood and friendship. She was a cousin and lifelong confidante of Napoleon III of France. This bond would later shape her role as a trusted hostess, travel companion, and political ally. Even Empress Eugenie, Napoleon's wife, would become a close personal friend. Long before Marie Amélie ever married, she had already been woven into the fabric of Europe's most influential royal circles. Her future would build upon these bonds, extending their reach into the highlands of Scotland and the palaces of Monaco. In the winter of 1843, Princess Marie Amélie of Baden entered into a marriage that would carry her far from the comforts of German court life. On the 23rd of February, she wed William Hamilton, Marquess of Douglas and Clydesdale, heir to the prestigious Scottish title of Duke of Hamilton. The match, though international, was no surprise. Marie, with her noble heritage and French connections, was considered an ideal consort for one of Britain's highest-ranking aristocrats. Their union brought together two worlds, the continental elegance of Baden and the rugged nobility of Scotland. William was the only son of the 10th Duke of Hamilton, a lineage steeped in wealth and tradition. Marie brought her own quiet strength, cultural refinement, and ties to European royalty. The marriage served not only as a personal alliance, but as a political bridge between nations, a reminder of how marriages in the 19th century often had deeper meanings than love alone. Marie left her homeland and began life anew in Scotland, adapting to a different language, climate, and culture. But she brought with her the grace and grandeur of a woman raised in royal courts. Her arrival was met with curiosity and admiration by British high society. She was no ordinary duchess to be. She was a foreign princess whose charm and composure would soon shape two very different courts. And in the years to come, she would leave a legacy not only through titles and estates, but through her descendants who would connect her name to Monaco and beyond. After her marriage to William Hamilton in 1843, Princess Marie Amélie of Baden settled into her new life on the Isle of Arran at Brodick Castle, the Hamilton family's ancestral stronghold. The castle, nestled between sea and mountain, offered stunning views and historic grandeur, but Marie found its layout far too modest for a duchess raised among the palaces of Baden. She soon began a series of renovations, redesigning Brodick Castle in the Bavarian style, blending her European heritage with her new Scottish identity. The transformation was more than architectural. It symbolized a fresh start, her attempt to make Scotland a true home. With its expanded wings, updated interiors, and welcoming halls, the castle became a center of social life. Marie hosted grand gatherings and entertained distinguished guests, including visiting members of royal families. It was here that she raised her children and slowly adapted to her new role within the British aristocracy. Though the castle was far from the courts of Paris or Baden, Marie carried with her the grace and discipline of continental royalty. She decorated the interiors with European furnishings, hosted formal dinners with refined etiquette, and maintained correspondence with friends and family across Europe. Brodick became more than a residence. It became a reflection of who she was, a royal woman bridging two cultures. Her life at the castle marked a chapter of quiet transformation, where tradition and personal identity found balance in a remote corner of Scotland. In the year 1852, Princess Marie Amélie of Baden officially became the Duchess of Hamilton. Her husband, William Hamilton, inherited the title following the death of his father, the 10th Duke. With this change, Marie's position in British aristocracy rose dramatically. She was now the highest-ranking Duchess in Scotland, commanding respect and recognition across both social and political circles. Becoming Duchess of Hamilton was more than a title, it was a symbol of full integration into British nobility. Though a foreign princess by birth, Marie now held one of the grandest positions in the United Kingdom, second in precedence only to royalty. Her role came with expectations to uphold the family's name, manage estates, participate in royal events, and represent her household with grace and decorum. Despite her noble background, adapting to the responsibilities of a British duchess required delicate navigation. Marie had to manage relationships with local tenants, understand the customs of Scottish high society, and adjust to the formalities of British court life. Yet she carried it all with poise, bringing her continental charm and intellect to every occasion. Her style, influenced by her upbringing in Baden and connections in France, set her apart. She was known for her refined taste, diplomatic sensibility, and quiet confidence. As Duchess, she represented a unique bridge between the traditions of Central Europe and the evolving aristocracy of Victorian Britain. Through this role, Marie Amélie of Baden solidified her place not only in British history, but in the complex tapestry of European noble life. Princess Marie Amélie of Baden was not only a duchess by title, she was deeply embedded in the fabric of European imperial society. One of her most enduring and influential relationships was with her cousin, Napoleon III of France. Their bond was both familial and political. As the nephew of Napoleon I, and as Emperor of the French, Napoleon III held extraordinary sway in continental affairs, and Marie was among his inner circle of trusted nobles. Her connection to the French imperial family extended beyond cousinhood. She was also a close friend of Empress Eugenie, Napoleon's wife. The Empress and Marie often attended official state events together and supported each other during moments of political and personal upheaval. Marie hosted them during visits to Baden and even in Scotland, offering both privacy and comfort in her residences far from the spotlight of Paris. In 1852, she and her husband were present during Napoleon's grand state entry into Paris. She also stood beside him at several major events, including an imperial celebration in honor of King Victor Emmanuel II of Sardinia and the baptism of Napoleon's son, the Prince Imperial. These occasions placed Marie not just among nobility, but among the key witnesses and participants in the shaping of modern European alliances. Her trusted presence during these moments revealed her diplomatic skill and personal warmth, qualities that earned her loyalty from both emperor and empress. Marie was more than a guest at the table of empire. She was part of the family that helped host it. As Duchess of Hamilton and cousin to the Emperor of France, Princess Marie Amélie of Baden became a frequent figure at some of the most high-profile diplomatic events in Europe. She was not merely a spectator. Her presence was intentional, strategic, and symbolic. Her appearances at major state occasions helped reinforce alliances between France, Britain, and the smaller German states. Marie's ability to move seamlessly between these royal courts made her a quiet but effective diplomatic asset. In 1855, she accompanied Emperor Napoleon III to a celebration in honor of King Victor Emmanuel II of Sardinia, a key moment in strengthening the ties that would later lead to Italian unification. A year later, she stood by during the baptism of the Prince Imperial, once again appearing at the center of imperial ceremony. Marie was recognized not only for her noble lineage, but for her discretion, cultural fluency, and reliability in high society. Her Scottish title gave her entry into British circles, while her Baden upbringing and French connections gave her access to the continent. Through these overlapping spheres, she became a unique diplomatic bridge, often providing informal hospitality, advice, and support to visiting royals and dignitaries. Unlike elected envoys or public ministers, Marie's diplomacy was personal. She fostered relationships through conversation, courtesy, and trust. Though she never held a formal office, her role in international society was clear. She helped smooth tensions, deepen friendships, and represent a spirit of unity among monarchies navigating the uncertain tides of 19th century Europe. In 1853, Princess Marie Amélie of Baden made a deeply personal and publicly significant decision. She converted to Roman Catholicism. While she had been raised with a strong sense of faith, her formal conversion sent ripples through both her family and the broader social world of British nobility. In Protestant-majority Scotland, where her title and duties placed her in a visible role, the decision was seen by some as controversial, even rebellious. The Glasgow Free Press reported on her conversion with notable interest, highlighting the Duchess's financial support for Catholic causes. Shortly after embracing her new faith, Marie donated £20 to establish a Catholic school in Hamilton. She also covered the costs for teachers and classroom materials, and later funded altars and stations of the cross for St. Mary's Church, a clear sign of her commitment. She often attended services there, becoming a quiet but steadfast member of the Catholic community. Yet not everyone admired her devotion. Queen Sophie of the Netherlands, a friend of Marie's mother, accused the Duchess of showing Catholic bigotry, particularly upset that Marie had failed to visit her mother on her deathbed. That judgment lingered, casting a shadow over her religious choices in some elite circles. Still, Marie remained firm in her beliefs. Her conversion was not an act of rebellion, but a reflection of spiritual conviction. In a world where royal women were often told what to believe and how to behave, Marie's quiet faith stood as an act of individual strength, one that shaped her legacy in unexpected ways. Beyond her roles as Duchess and diplomat, Princess Marie Amélie of Baden was a devoted mother. She and her husband, the 11th Duke of Hamilton, had 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter, each of whom would carry forward the family's influence across Europe. Marie's legacy lived on not only in titles and estates, but in the marriages and careers of her children, which expanded the reach of her lineage into both nobility and royalty. Her eldest son, William Douglas Hamilton, succeeded as the 12th Duke of Hamilton and continued the family's prominence in Scotland. Her second son, Charles Douglas Hamilton, became the 7th Earl of Selkirk and served as a lieutenant in the famed 11th Hussars Regiment. Both sons carried forward the Hamilton name, but it was Marie's daughter, Lady Mary Victoria, whose path would lead to the greatest dynastic legacy. In 1869, Mary married Prince Albert, the future Albert I of Monaco. Though their marriage would eventually be annulled, it produced one son, Louis II, who would become sovereign Prince of Monaco. Through him, Marie Amélie became the great-grandmother of Prince Rainier III, and ultimately the great-great-grandmother of the current ruler, Prince Albert II of Monaco. Marie's careful guidance and strategic foresight helped shape these outcomes. She was not just a mother in the personal sense. She was a dynastic architect, ensuring that her children's futures reflected both their noble birth and the international spirit of their remarkable family. The year 1863 marked a solemn turning point in Princess Marie Amélie of Baden's life. On the 15th of July, her husband, William Hamilton, the 11th Duke of Hamilton, died suddenly in Paris. The Duke had collapsed while dining at the Maison Dorée on the Boulevard des Italiens and was taken to the Hotel Bristol at Place Vendôme, where Marie rushed to his side. For a brief moment, it appeared he might recover, but just days later, he passed away at the age of 52. His death ended a marriage that had lasted 2 decades and brought Marie into the highest circles of British nobility. Though their relationship had its challenges, it had also produced a legacy that would stretch across generations and nations. After his passing, Marie was officially styled as the Dowager Duchess of Hamilton, a title that carried respect, but also signaled her transition into a quieter, more reflective chapter of life. The Duke's wealth was estimated at just under £140,000, a considerable fortune at the time, yet his death left more than a financial vacuum. It removed a key figure from the complex web of aristocratic ties that connected Baden, Scotland, France, and Monaco. For Marie, this moment was deeply personal. She had lost not only her husband but her public counterpart, the figure alongside whom she had navigated European courts and royal events. Now a widow, she would have to rely on her own stature, memory, and family to preserve the name she had helped elevate. Following the death of her husband in 1863, Princess Marie Amélie of Baden began a new chapter as the Dowager Duchess of Hamilton. No longer bound by the demands of court appearances or public duties in Scotland, she chose to return to her native Baden, the land of her birth, and the place where she had first learned the ways of royal life. There, she settled in the elegant Villa Stephanie in the resort town of Baden-Baden. Baden-Baden was not merely a retreat, it was a social center for Europe's elite, known for its mineral baths and aristocratic gatherings. From this graceful setting, Marie remained active in high society. Her daughter Mary visited her regularly, and the villa itself became a gathering place for cosmopolitan guests. In fact, the journal Ladies' Realm later described Villa Stephanie as the rendezvous of the very best cosmopolitan society. Though now a widow, Marie continued to maintain strong ties with royalty. She paid and received visits from members of the British royal family, including Queen Victoria and the Duchess of Kent. She also formed a friendship with Albert Edward, the Prince of Wales, a connection that stirred some controversy in elite circles. especially after rumors linked her family to less reputable company. Even so, Marie Amélie carried herself with quiet dignity. In Baden, she found a balance between privacy and prominence, a respected figure whose life story was still unfolding, not through formal titles, but through the enduring influence of her presence, her past, and the remarkable future of her children. Even in widowhood, Princess Marie Amélie of Baden remained connected to the circles of power and royalty she had moved through her entire life. As the Dowager Duchess of Hamilton, she sustained her social standing through visits and friendships with members of the British royal family. Her association with Queen Victoria and the Duchess of Kent was well documented, and she maintained a respectful correspondence with senior royals. She was also known to have hosted and visited the Prince of Wales, Albert Edward, later King Edward VII. These ties were not always viewed without criticism. By the mid-1860s, some within the court, particularly Queen Victoria, began to express concern over the company Marie and her son were keeping. Letters from this period hint at reputational unease, with allegations of association with questionable figures. Queen Sophie of the Netherlands, a friend of Marie's late mother, even described Marie in harsh terms, calling her bloodless, fat, sick, and making disparaging comments about her children's character and appearance. Despite the gossip and judgments, Marie maintained her poise. She did not respond publicly to such remarks, choosing instead to uphold her dignity through quiet resilience. She continued to engage in charitable works, religious support, and family gatherings. In many ways, her later years were defined not just by her titles or associations, but by her ability to navigate the often cruel world of aristocratic opinion with calm endurance. She remained a presence, noble, composed, and complex, whose legacy outlived the criticism and carried forward through the lives of her children and grandchildren. Among Princess Marie Amélie of Baden's children, it was her daughter, Lady Mary Victoria Hamilton, whose path would prove the most historically enduring. Born on the 11th of December in the year 1850, Mary was raised in a household that bridged British aristocracy and continental nobility. In 1869, at the age of 18, she married Prince Albert of Monaco, the future Albert I, and heir to the tiny but storied principality. The marriage, celebrated across European courts, was seen as a strong political alliance. Through this union, the Hamilton bloodline entered the House of Grimaldi, but the match, while noble in appearance, was far from harmonious. Cultural differences, personal incompatibilities, and the pressures of royal expectation quickly strained the relationship. After the birth of their only child, Louis II, future Prince of Monaco, Mary left both her husband and Monaco itself. Their marriage was officially annulled in 1880. Despite the briefness of the union, its legacy was profound. Through Louis II, Princess Marie Amélie became a direct ancestor of Prince Rainier III and, eventually, Prince Albert II, the current ruler of Monaco. Mary later remarried Hungarian nobleman Prince Tassilo Festetics and spent the remainder of her life in Central Europe, far from the rocky shores of Monaco. Through her daughter, Marie Amélie's influence extended into the modern age. The Grimaldi line, known today for its glamour and history, carries within it the quiet legacy of a Baden princess who once made her home on the Isle of Arran. In her final decades, Princess Marie Amélie of Baden settled permanently at Villa Stephanie in Baden-Baden, a refined residence that mirrored the calm dignity of her later years. The villa, nestled among lush gardens and renowned for hosting elite visitors, became her haven. Though once a central figure in courts from Paris to London, Marie now lived in relative quiet, maintaining only select engagements with close friends, family, and European nobility. Villa Stephanie was far from isolated. According to contemporary journals, it became a social hub for cosmopolitan guests, diplomats, and royal relatives. Yet Marie preferred measured interactions over lavish spectacle. Her daughter, Mary Victoria, often visited, bringing with her the next generation of royal lineage. These moments allowed Marie to watch her legacy unfold firsthand, not through titles, but through family bonds and enduring affection. Her reputation in society remained a blend of admiration and criticism. Some praised her intellect and dignity, others remembered past controversies. But in Baden-Baden, she lived without public confrontation. She remained devoted to her faith, continued to support Catholic causes, and preserved her correspondence with figures across Europe. Though the grandeur of her earlier life had faded, Marie Amélie remained respected, if somewhat removed, from the affairs of court. She had lived as a princess, a duchess, a diplomat, a mother, and a widow. In these later years, she lived simply, not forgotten, but no longer seeking attention. Hers was a quiet end befitting a life once lived at the crossroads of empire and aristocracy. Princess Marie Amélie of Baden passed away on the 17th of October in the year 1888, at the age of 71. Her death took place in Baden-Baden, the city that had become her peaceful retreat and the center of her final chapter. Though she had long since stepped away from court life, her passing was noted among the European aristocracy, a quiet end to a life shaped by diplomacy, duty, and dynastic legacy. In her final years, Marie had become more than a widow or a dowager. She was a matriarch whose influence extended across generations. Her children, especially Mary Victoria, had carried her lineage into other royal houses. Through Mary's son, Louis II, the blood of Baden and Hamilton reached Monaco. That line would continue through Prince Rainier III and ultimately to Prince Albert II, the current ruler of Monaco. This connection made Marie Amélie not only a Duchess of Hamilton, but a cornerstone in the foundation of Monaco's modern royal family. Though Marie's own name rarely headlines history books, her influence is still deeply felt. Her legacy was not carved in grand declarations or public spectacles, but in careful decisions, in alliances made through marriage, in friendships maintained across empires, and in a life lived with unwavering composure. She was remembered for her serene dignity, her unwavering Catholic faith, and her devotion to family. Visitors to Villa Stephanie recalled a woman of rare discipline, always gracious, impeccably dressed, and alert to the smallest social detail. Even in solitude, she remained every inch a duchess. She left behind a complex, yet quietly noble example of how power can be wielded gently. From the palaces of Baden to the castles of Scotland, and eventually to the salons of Paris and the hills of Monaco, her story traced the shifting map of 19th century Europe. And though the world around her changed with revolutions, wars, and dynastic falls, Marie Amélie of Baden remained a steady presence, elegant, enduring, and quietly unforgettable. What do you think about Theresa Kunigunde Sobiska? Was she a courageous queen, a woman of faith and fortitude who ruled alone, faced exile, and forgave betrayal with grace? Or a forgotten royal, caught between ambition and war, remembered more for her trials than her triumphs? And what about Princess Marie Amélie of Baden? Was she a refined duchess, a diplomat in silence, shaping royal futures through marriage and motherhood, whose lineage still rules in Monaco today? Or merely a distant figure, overshadowed by empire, controversy, and the quiet solitude of her later years? Were these women architects of dynastic legacy or silent witnesses to the burdens of nobility? Did they hold power in their calm endurance, or were their voices lost in the grand theaters of court and crown? We would love to hear your reflections. Please share your thoughts in the comments. And if their stories touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more journeys into the lives of history's quiet visionaries. Thank you so much for watching.